What is up, everybody? Back at it again with another episode of Initial Dweebs. So today we're going to be doing something special. We're going to be getting the 86 ready because in 6 days I'm going to be taking it to the track for the very first time. I've owned this car for 9 years and I've always wanted to take it to the track. We're actually going to be taking it to a drift track called Spirit Peaks Raceway. A lot of Corolla guys drift at this track and I've drifted there in some friends' cars, but I've never had the opportunity to actually take my own 86 to the track, and I've always wanted to. There's a bunch of stuff on the 86 that has to be done before it can go to the track. It's not track ready right now. So I got some stuff coming in the mail and I have a bunch of parts and boxes. And what we're gonna try to do today, since we only have 6 days until I can get out there and bring it to the track, is I gotta just try to grind out as much stuff as possible today and try to get it track ready by that time. Hopefully we'll have it track ready, and in this video you'll get to see me driving on the track for the very first time, and we'll see how she does. All right, so this is the 86. There's a bunch of stuff that needs to be done on this thing today. Basically what I need to do is, my carrier bearing is shot, so I need to jack it up, get it up on jack stands, pull the drive shaft, replace the carrier bearing. I need to change the transmission oil. I need to change the engine oil. I have to do a mount for the fire extinguisher. I have to get in the trunk and actually make, as you've seen in the last episode, I did kind of like a ratchet strap mount that works for now, but I need to have a more solid mount for the battery so that it's track ready. You can't have the battery flying off and bouncing around in the back of the freaking trunk when you're on track. So I got to take this to the shop after that, after I do all the other stuff and get the battery mount welded in there and everything like that. I got a Flows quick rack, steering rack, all new steering components, tie rod ends, inner tie rod ends, spacer, boots, all of that stuff. Danny just helped me align the car and it aligned out fine even since the wreck, but the rack has a ton of play in it, so I'm just not going to deal with that. I'm going to try to get this replaced before the track day. I've heard mixed reviews on the quick rack on how they feel at the track. Some people say they're too twitchy. I don't know what to expect, but it's got to be better than the rack that has a ton of play in it, so I'm just going to send it, put it in there, and hope for the best. This car is like, you know, it's a multi-variable car for me. It's not only going to be going to the drift track. Obviously, it's a nice car. I'm not going to be drifting it all the time. One of my real goals for it is to actually take it to the Ridge and do time attack racing in this car. That is actually my dream for it. But I do like drifting, and I do want to see, you know, how it's gonna act on the track. And it's a little bit beat up right now, so it's like a free pass right now. You know, I'm not worried about messing up the paint or, you know, getting a couple dents or scratches on it because I'm going to repaint the whole thing eventually. So it's like now I get this rare opportunity to kind of drive this car hard and not really give a shit. That's basically what I'm going to be doing in the next couple months until, you know, I figure out when I'm going to actually repaint this thing, do all the body work and all that stuff on it. But yeah, I'm really excited. We got this quick rack. I've always wanted one of these. I got new brake rotors in there, and I got a tow strap coming in the mail because there is no tow hooks on the front of this car. I cut the stock tow hooks off back in the day because they had like an RV mount welded to them, so I had to cut them off. But I'm gonna send a tow strap through this little hole here that's gonna hang right here, so if I break down, which I probably will because this T50 is loud, they can actually have something to hook up to. And I also have a fire extinguisher mount coming in the mail, and I will be mounting that to the C-pillar bar because the tech rules state that you have to have a proper fire extinguisher mount. Yeah, so I'm gonna get this car jacked up, get it up on jack stands, and then we're going to get under there and get the freaking drive shaft out. All right, it's up on the jack stands. Now all we have to do is get the wheels off. All right, and the wheels are off. So the car's jacked up, the wheels are off. I found something interesting when I took the wheels off, actually, is if you come around to this side, you grab the top of the rotor. You hear that? This wheel bearing is either bad or it has come loose. So I'm gonna open this up at some point today, take this little cover off, pop the nut, and see if I can't repack it and see if that fixes it, and inspect the bearing and see kind of what it looks like. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Probably contributed to some of the play in the steering, some of the weird clicking and shit that I was dealing with. So that's good to know that, you know, I was able to find that. But anyway, basically it's jacked up. So I'm gonna crawl under there. We're gonna drain the transmission fluid, and then we're gonna start working on getting the transmission, or getting the drive shaft off, so we can start working on replacing the carrier bearing. So let's get up under there. Like always, I did not leave myself a lot of room. I thought
I always think I jack the car up way more than I actually do. I'm like, oh, that's high enough to get under there, and then I get under there and I could barely fit my shoulders under here. So I'm basically squeezing, so bear with me on these camera angles. But this is the drain plug. It is a 17 millimeter. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loosen this up, pull the transmission fluid out. I mean, this transmission has been so loud. I'm running some really thick fluid in here, 85 140, just to make it quiet enough to be reasonable. So, yeah, who knows what this oil is gonna look like. I'm guessing it's gonna have a crap ton of metal shavings in it, but we'll see what happens. Okay. All right, so we're gonna let that drain out. All right, after a little inspection, as you can see, this is the drain bolt. This is all sludge and pieces and chunks of metal. What can you do? Hopefully this, so my main worry about this whole drift event is actually my transmission. It's a T50. If you know anything about 86s, these transmissions are made of glass. I don't have high hopes for this T50. I hope that it doesn't blow up, but it does have a lot of metal chunks, which seems to correspond with how loud it is. It's like the input shaft bearing in the transmission is just completely smoked. So, you know, we'll just have to do a little science experiment and just see how long she lasts. Check this out. I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is if you can see the glitter all over my hands, that is premium T50 Toyota transmission glitter. So if you're in the fashion business, hit me up. I'll send you out some of this premium 35-year-old aged T50 transmission glitter. All right, here's the underside of the 86. This is the carrier bearing. This is what I need to be replacing. As you can see, it's all dry rotted, and here's the rest. And if I grab the drive shaft and move it up and down, it moves a shit ton. Yeah, so basically what was happening was when I was hard shifting at lower RPMs, I felt this giant clunk in the floor, and I thought that the rear end was bad, and I was like, no, that's super expensive. But luckily for me, it was just this. So hopefully I'm able to get it off and get it replaced without having to do some weird shit. But yeah, I'm gonna take off these 2 bolts, these 4 bolts. I'm gonna try to do it without taking the whole thing out. We'll kind of see how it works out, but I've never done this before. I've never actually done a carrier bearing, so it's gonna be a learning experience for all of us. All right, I got all these bolts out. They are all super bad, different frickin' sized heads. Some are 14, some are 13, some are 12. No lock washers, and a lot of them are rounded off, so I'm definitely gonna have to go buy some new grade 8 hardware with lock washers for this. So I'm actually glad I have to do this, because these would have probably come apart at some point. Okay, dropping the shaft. Get my head out of the way here. Okay, no oil. And it's free. I don't know how much of that you guys were able to see, but it is free. I was able to leave the backside in. U-joints still feel good. So let's slide this out of here and then work on getting it apart. All right, so here is the front half of the drive shaft, and here is the old carrier bearing. Here is the new carrier bearing. So basically what you have to do, from my understanding, is that there's this big nut on the end of here. So I'm gonna have to pry out that little section there, pull the nut off, and then essentially this side slides out, and then you're gonna be able to, like, I think, hammer the carrier bearing or press the carrier bearing off of this little housing right here. So basically that's what we're gonna do. I gotta find if I have any sockets that are big enough, but this is completely destroyed. No wonder it sounded like a giant clunk every time I'd shift. So hopefully this makes the car a lot better. I don't know how long this has been bad for. I mean, the clunk really started to only become really apparent after I got in that car accident and hit the curb. So maybe it happened fully then, or maybe, you know, who knows. We'll just see how it feels after I put it in. All right, I had to take a quick detour. I had to run to the store and get some new nuts and bolts for the drive shaft because the old ones were crap. I had to get a 24mm socket because I couldn't find mine. So now I'm tasked with trying to get this bolt out, or this nut out. I do not have a vise here. I have a vise at the shop, but that's all the way across town. So I don't really want to drive out there. So I'm just gonna try to get this off. All right, to my surprise, the nut came right off, but this looks like it's not wanting to come off very easily. I whacked it with the hammer a couple times, but it's scary because I don't want to break this flange. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna prop this up. I'm gonna fill this with PB Blaster and see if I can get the PB Blaster to seep down into these gears and hopefully help free this up a little bit. If I have to, I will heat it with the torch. All right, I have it soaking in PB. Thank you, CRV, for your off-road tire as a prop. I'm gonna let this soak, and while this is soaking, I'm actually going to start working on changing the oil. I have the good old MicroGuard oil filter from O'Reilly, and I have 10W40. I'm gonna run a little thicker oil. Since it's hot, it's summertime, I'm gonna be beating the crap out of it, so it's gonna get pretty thin. So yeah, let's do that while that over there lets the PB Blaster do its thing, and then hopefully by the time we get back to that, we'll be able to get it apart. All right. Oil is coming out. Let that drain. And it looks like my oil pan gasket is leaking a little bit. So I'm gonna go around and tighten up all those 10s and see if that doesn't help. All right, so I got the oil change done. I'm letting the oil get all the way down to the block before I check it so I can top it off and get the perfect amount. New filters on there. I noticed that my oil pan gasket was leaking a little bit, so I tightened up all of the bolts around it. They were all a little bit loose, probably because the crazy mounts, a lot of vibration goes through the car, so bolts tend to loosen up a lot. So basically did that. Now this thing has been soaking for a while, so let's see how good this PB Blaster did. Put that in the grass. Sorry, grass. Well, hey, it worked. Nice. Perfect. All right, so now gotta figure out how to get this rusty ass bearing off. Maybe cut it off. Hopefully it just comes off. All right, I'm gonna start hammering on this and just see if I can't get it to move at all without falling apart. Oh, got it. I can't believe it came off that easily. That's crazy. Awesome, it actually came off. I can't believe it, to be honest. I thought I was gonna have to cut it off. Normally when I do things like this, the bearing race ends up being on there and then everything else you have to cut away. But yeah, this thing is absolutely freaking thrashed. So I'm happy to get it replaced. I'm gonna use a Scotch-Brite pad. I'm gonna clean this up, make it all real nice. Wow, I'm in complete disbelief. Look how clean that came out. That's insane. With just the little Scotch-Brite pad and some brake clean, this thing looks brand new. All right, I cleaned up this as well, and I have the new bearing. So I'm gonna get our good old trusty handy John Deere grease. This stuff is awesome. We use it on everything. I don't know if it's better than other grease or not, but it's green and it's John Deere. So, you know, you can't really argue with that. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grease up this race a little bit, get that all greased up, and make sure, you know, I don't know if you're supposed to grease these up. I didn't look anything up on how to do these. I just, you know, I've been working on cars for so long that some stuff is just kind of self-explanatory. It's always good measure when it comes to putting bearing races on and anything like that to put grease on it. Same thing on splines. So in the future, you need to remove it. It's not welded on there. But yeah, let's get some grease on there, grease in there, put some grease around in there. Maybe I should get like a socket or something, a big socket, and put it in there and then kind of pound it down a little bit. I think honestly, if I put this on there and then ran the bolt down, it should sink it down, but just for good measure, I'm going to pound this down just to make sure. All right, so I found this socket and it actually fit perfect. and I put it on there and I pounded it down until it was flush. So it is good to go. All right, it's all together. It looks snazzy as heck, and I'm going to Loctite the threads before I put the bolts or the nut on, because a good rule of thumb is if it spins, you should put Loctite on it. You don't want this coming apart. It will probably be crazy sounding and mess everything up. So definitely Loctite anything that spins, especially if it has to do with your drive shaft. So we have the locking pin or the locking little slot hammered in, so it's not going to come out, and it is perfect. So yeah, I'm gonna reinstall this and then we'll move on to the next thing. All right, so there's been quite an upset in the plan. I went to install this and basically this hole wasn't wide enough. The threads on each side were underneath of the edge. As you can see, here's the difference. As you can see, the distance between this edge here and this edge here is different even after I filed. Like you could see like where the normal edge goes around. I filed it up about 2 or 3 millimeters on each side. With this file, it took me fucking forever. As you can see, or as you can probably hear, I'm out of breath right now. I tried a bunch of random step bits to no avail. Hopefully I filed it enough. I'm gonna put it in there and see if it actually fits. If not, I'm gonna have to keep filing. All right, it is installed. The new bolts, the carrier bearing, all filed out. It was freaking annoying, but you know, it is what it is. But check this out. Ah, it's so much better than it was. I feel like that is gonna be really nice. I'm going to start working on the steering rack, I think. The dreaded freaking steering rack that I don't wanna do. I think that's what I'm gonna start working on. All right, so I have the tie rod ends removed on each side. But before I remove the rack, basically what I need to do is I need to do the 2 bolts on the steering column, and then I want to be able to pull the steering column back into the cabin away from this U-joint here. So I can crack this U-joint after I undo the steering column, and I'll be able to pull the steering column away from the U-joint in order to get them separated. After that, I should be able to loosen the steering rack bolts, and I should be able to rotate the steering rack and remove it out the side. So we'll see how we can do that. All right, I don't know how well you guys can see because the sun is blasting me right now, but we have to remove this panel, all this panel, to get to the 2 bolts for the column, to drop the column down. So basically what you do is there's a screw on this side, and there's a couple screws on this side, and there's a screw here. I already removed that. So you remove the speaker panel, and then after that, there's a couple more screws. I'm missing those, and then you got some 10 millimeters in here to remove. 8.6 interior is incredibly simple. I love it. I've removed this dash like probably 20 times. So there are the 2 bolts right there for the steering column. So what we'll do is we'll drop those down. All right, I got the steering column down, pulled back, and also it's detached from the rest of the column. So now I have to get down there and I have to get the column bolts. That basically there's these couple straps. I'll show you. I don't know if you guys can see them, but there's these 2 bolts on the top for this side of the column, and the other side has one on the bottom and one on the top. And basically you have to take these 2 out, and there'll be a cap on the top that comes off, and then I should be able to rotate the column sideways and slide it ever so gently out the side. So hopefully it comes out without having to drop the subframe. All right, cap 1 is off. Now let's get cap 2. So this bolt's a little tricky. You have to use a ratcheting wrench, and you gotta basically do a tiny turn at a time, but it's not too bad. Then you gotta get the one up here through this hole. Oh, try to do it without breaking my knuckles. Oh yeah, looks like it's wanting to come out. Rotate it this way. Don't drop it on my head. All right, here is the old steering rack. It is out. It has some problems with the steering bushing on this side. I'll open it up and show you guys. Basically what I'm gonna have to do now is I'm going to have to take the new rack, and I'm going to have to measure the sides to make sure the rack is centered. And then I'm gonna have to add all the new components and try to get the measurement as close as possible to the measurements of here so I don't mess up my new alignment too bad. But I will mess it up regardless, and we'll have to, Danny said he would help me with his toe plates, readjust the alignment a little bit that it needs. Here are the rack spacers to have the angle. But yeah, this is basically what we're looking at right now. I'm gonna start working on getting the boots off of the old rack and kind of looking at it and trying to see what I need to do to get it all to match up. All right, the rack is done. I had to take the tie rod spacer out, so RIP angle. What I did to get the toe right is that I drilled 2 holes on this board and I shoved the tie rod end threads down into the holes for this, and then I basically did the same thing for this and just adjusted them out one by one evenly until they both fit into those holes, and the center of the rack was about right there, so it should be pretty close to aligned. So now I'm gonna put this in there and hopefully it works out. All right, now that the rack is all finalized, I'm going to also replace the starter. I've been having this problem with this car, the fact that the factory starter comes with a heat shield and I don't have it, and I have a aftermarket header. So I think that what's going on is my header is cooking my starter and severely reducing the life of it. So I have this gold foil, and basically what I'm gonna do is before I install this, I'm gonna wrap it and try to stick this all over it to try to prolong its life and prevent it from going out. So let's see how it goes. All right, the Voyager 1 mod has been done. Hopefully it actually, you know, doesn't die on me after 6 months like the other ones, but it looks kind of cool. So yeah, let's go stick this damn thing in there. All right, we're back out here another day. So the last time we were out here, got the steering rack all done and everything's set up. So right now what's left before I could actually drive the car and try out the new steering rack and then get to the other bits that we need to do to have this thing ready for the track is I got to put the transmission fluid or the gear oil in the transmission. And it's pretty interesting if you're not very well versed on old cars or 8.6s and stuff. You can actually take the shifter turret off and put the oil through the shifter hole, which makes it super easy to actually replace the transmission fluid. So you have these 4 bolt, well, I'm missing one, I guess, so I'm gonna have to get one of those. But you usually have 4 bolts here. You remove these 4 bolts, this whole shifter turret pops off, and you can just pour the transmission oil right in the hole. So let's get after it. There's one. I always like to have a rag so I don't get gear oil all over the inside of my car, even though the inside of my car already always smells like gear oil because I do this so often. But you know, pull this out. There is the shifter. Set it to the side and boom, now we can just crack open our gear oil. Right, see if I can do this without spilling oil everywhere. It takes about 1.7 quarts. Yeah, you just pour it in there like that and it all goes down into the transmission. I'm using very thick, way thicker than recommended oil for this transmission because it's summer and it's hot, and this transmission has really bad input shaft bearing noise. So I'm hoping that the thicker viscosity will help protect the transmission. In the winter time, this viscosity of oil, you probably wouldn't even be able to get it into gear or shift it very well until the transmission warmed up. I think I might have just overfilled it a little bit, but you know what? It's probably not a bad thing. So yeah, just gonna toss this all back together and we'll get on to the next thing. All right, so this is gonna be my first test drive since doing all the work to it. Steering rack, starter, carrier bearing, and all the other stuff I did previously in the video. I haven't even tried to start it yet, so we'll just go from there. I'm pretty sure the stock rack is 3.5 turns lock to lock. The quick rack is supposed to be 2.5 turns lock to lock, so it's gonna be a lot tighter. I just hope that everything worked out. We don't break down or something weird happen, because we have to go over to the shop to weld up the battery mount. Well, I'm getting no starter, so that's not a good sign. What was that? So, my car was making a crazy ass noise. All right, so first hiccup on my initial attempt to drive the car. You guys heard that crazy metal on metal noise. It was coming from the starter, so I pulled the starter off, and check this out. This brand new O'Reilly starter, it's stuck out. The gear is supposed to go back into the starter after it starts the car to disengage the flywheel. This one was just stuck engaged with the flywheel. So that's why I was making all that awful noise. So I'm gonna put the old one back in, and I'm gonna take this one to O'Reilly's and exchange it because it's a lifetime warranty. All right, so I have the new starter installed. Let's give this a go again. Hopefully we have no more issues. Perfect. All right, she starts, she's running. Okay, now I'm gonna put the ramps away and then we're gonna drive it and see how she feels. This is attempt number 2. Drive this thing over to the shop. Now it actually runs. O2's reading good now that I calibrated it. See how the steering and the new carrier bearing feels. All right, already I can tell that the steering feels way tighter. Holy cow. Oh yeah, wow, what a difference. Yeah, so I can already tell steering feels 100 times better. Zero slop in the wheel. Feels real tight. O2's still working. Wheel is almost perfectly straight. You know, so that means it actually is perfectly straight. So that means am I drilling the holes in that 2x4 for the tie rod end, the threaded portion of the tie rod end to fit into, to get my overall rack measurement. Actually works pretty well, so I'm pretty happy about that. But yeah, I mean, it's driving good. Oh my god. I have a very slow driver just cut me off. Yeah, the rack feels amazing. I don't know how it's gonna feel driving, like drifting, but as far as just driving, it feels very tight. All right, we're back here at the shop. We are going to start working on this battery mount. So I have this nifty little piece from Amazon that goes onto the battery, and it's adjustable, so you can adjust it and have it fit right over whatever size battery you need. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to weld a washer on this hole to reinforce it, and I'm gonna use this hole for the threaded rod for this side, and then on this side I'm going to weld a steel L bracket right here to hold this threaded rod, and it should be good to go after that's done. So I realized I forgot my angle grinder at my house, and I have nothing and no way to cut metal. So I had to just make do with what I had and what I could find, and I have a bench grinder. So I found this little L bracket, and basically I used a bench grinder to bevel the edges. Right here, I just cleaned the car to metal. I'm gonna tack this down here, and then I'm just gonna put the other rod, this rod, through this hole right here. Later on I'll make a better battery mount, but this should do for track purposes. So yeah, let's start tacking this thing in. All right, so the battery is mounted, it's secure, it's good to go. And the fire extinguisher, I couldn't find anywhere in the car to mount it. It's such a big fire extinguisher. There's really nowhere to mount it without destroying my interior somewhere, so I mounted it to this. It's a little inconvenient, but I can easily reach back here, pull this and grab it in case of an emergency. So yeah, hopefully it doesn't rattle too much, but yeah, there it is. All right, I was hoping to get everything in one video, but this video is already gonna be like 30 minutes long, so there's no possible way that I'm gonna release an hour-long video. So I'm gonna have to definitely do this in 2 parts, but we got a lot done in this video. We got this toe strap, which I haven't shown yet. Little toe strap hooked to the bash bar, and this will come in handy probably. Got the steering rack, brand new everything installed. that piece of crap starter. I don't even want to look at it. Got the old starter back in there. Got the fire extinguisher mount. And yeah, this thing is solid. I drove it around today. It's feeling the best that it's felt since the accident. And if you guys didn't know, if you guys are new to the channel, I was hit here last summer. I was smashed in the fender, and basically I hit a curb and the lip came off. I ran it over. My alignment got super messed up, and just a bunch of crap happened. So, and I've just been driving it around like that. So, but I have a new fender for it that I'm gonna put on it at some point. But yeah, since the accident, now it's finally driving solid. The rack is good, everything's good, and I'm really excited to get this thing out there at the track. All right, everybody, thank you guys so much for watching. That'll be a wrap for this video. In the next video, we are going to take the car over to Danny's house. He's gonna help me with the tune. We're gonna tune it for this weather and get everything finalized so the car could be performing its best. When we take it out to the track, we're gonna mess with the alignment a little bit, and then we're gonna go to the track. In the next video, if you like what you've seen and you wanna see more, be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and stay tuned for next time, because the next video we're gonna actually take this thing to the track and we're gonna test it out, and we're gonna see if it can take the beating, and we're gonna see how well it does. And I am super excited. It's gonna be a great experience. I'm super happy to share it with you guys. So thanks for watching. Peace.